Be Monday morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you're at, you are tuned in to the Global Role Player Podcast Live, presented to you by Swiss Cultures. I am Jordan Taylor. No Anthony Goods today, but we still rolling strong with the SEC legend and now ESPN SEC Network college basketball analyst, Richard Hendrix. Rich, what's happening, man? You good?
Man, doing great, man. It's Monday. Happy to be back on the show. We got a lot of topics to discuss. We don't have our man Goods with us today, but it's going to be a good one. We got some exciting things to talk about, and we hope everybody's interactive on the show and enjoys another good one.
That's right. College basketball about to get underway for you, so I know you about to get busy. But before we do get started, make sure y'all hit subscribe and the like button below and follow us on all socials with the handle at Role Player Media for the Role Player Podcast and at Swiss Cultures for Swish. We are the Show Love Podcast, as you know, and we got a lot of love to give out in our 4 quarters worth of topics. And there's a lot to get to, like Rich said. But first and foremost, we're going to start with the Starting Five, the new series on Netflix that's taking the internet by storm. Some of his toughest critics are saying it's the first thing Barack did for black folks, man. He, executive produced the show. Not me. But I just heard in the street. That's what the streets are saying, man. But look, what you think? What you think the best storyline is on? What do you think the best storyline is on the Starting Five, man?
Listen, I've been hearing a lot of reviews. I got hit up last night, man. My sister actually sent me a message saying, I got to check out this show. I haven't been able to catch up and watch all of it. But, just the fact that they actually put together this thing, following around top-notch superstars and what they're doing in their pursuit of being great, that's the type of stuff that I think as a viewer you really want to see. I mean, so to me, you got to start with LeBron James. When you got a guy who has so much longevity in the game, he's been doing so many things for so many years. I mean, it's just something interesting to talk about.
You saying LeBron had the best storyline? You all right?
Well,
your kid's sick over there? I know fall is starting. They're getting you sick. You good?
Listen, what happens is when you become a guy who is now an old head in the game, I have more and more respect for what LeBron is doing because he's out there, with the longevity. I mean, so when I look at that, 21 years he's playing professionally at a high level. It's something that I marvel at every single time because I know I can't lace him up anymore. So I got to give it the respect that it deserves every moment that I get a chance. Well, who do you think is the show on the Starting Five that you would say is the person that really is the spotlight?
I was talking about this earlier. My only problem with LeBron's storyline is I love LeBron. I love anybody great that played the game, but his storyline is just so we've heard it. We knew everything. We done heard it time and time again. And it's been told. It's been discussed. So it's now when you see it on the show, it's man, this ain't even nothing new. This ain't nothing new at all. And they didn't. I feel like it could have done, if anything, pull back the cover even more on his family, because Zuri's so dope. She's fun to watch, and just the inner workings of his family would have been cool to see, but I don't know if he wanted to get that personal, understandably so. But for me, it's probably Anthony Edwards is probably the most fun. He's just a kid. But Tatum, I like Tatum's story, man. Just the fact that he won the championship, you kind of got to see there was more to flesh out. He, between the relationship with his dad and a little bit of Drew Hanlon and his mom, and obviously got to see his son, and then you got to see a little bit of how he felt about all the scrutiny that he gets, which some of it to me is a little bit unfair.
Yeah. Why do you think it's unfair? I mean, obviously, there's a guy who's a superstar, but at the same time, you do believe that people say that you should be able to win with one of the better rosters in the team. It is about time, right?
I mean, sure, but even then, he still didn't get Finals MVP, led him in rebounds, points, and assists, and didn't get Finals MVP. That's insane. That's crazy. When was the last time that's happened? Has that ever happened? I don't know if that's ever happened. I don't know if it will ever happen again, that the best player arguably the best player leads the team in points, rebounds, and assists, doesn't get Finals MVP. And then just the idea that he doesn't even get put in the top 5 when a lot of people don't put him in the top 5 NBA players. And it's bro, if anybody else had the resume that he had, they might be getting put up in the next up in the GOAT debate, but the next up behind LeBron and all that.
Right. So you think it's fair to say that Jaylen Brown shouldn't have been the Finals MVP after the performance that Tatum had? Is it just a little bit of people just want to share the love?
I don't know what it is. I think it's probably something. It could be something deeper than that. But yeah, I mean, I don't think Jaylen Brown played great. Don't get it twisted. Tatum didn't shoot the ball that great, but he was some of his shot selection and finishing around the rim could be up for question. But other than that, he controlled the game offensively just as much as I said Jaylen Brown did defensively, and he guarded Luka, so that's why he got a lot of love. But Tatum had to switch on to Luka quite frequently. So, yeah, I don't really get it. I don't see it. So it was cool to see him finally get over the hump and just kind of his story. And it was cool to see how much he really cared. They asked the question, if you could have $1 billion or play in the NBA on the show, and Tatum said, I think Emile Jefferson said, write the check. And Tatum said, play in the NBA. So I can relate to that, especially not anymore. Not anymore. Like, obviously, the answer today will probably be very different.
Right.
But this man is at the height of the game. He's made 305, whatever he's made. And his answer is still the same.
Right. Right.
So,
he loves the game. I mean, obviously, you see how much when they talk about how much he loves the greats that have played in the game before him, the love that he has for Kobe and all that aspect. I mean, you got to be a student of the game to really be good at this thing. And, I think, unfortunately, a lot of players don't have that passion and respect for who came before them. And I think it hinders them from being great. I think when you see the amount of money that players make at an early age now, that is the main driver why you don't see these guys hit the levels of success that they probably could reach, because they're not focused on being great. They're focused on just being, influencers, making a lot of money and just enjoying themselves. And if you're going to be a really good player, you got to be in love with the game.
I think two guys that care and love the game so much, I feel like it's almost like there's a mental hindrance to that as well, where like you can care too much. You know what I'm saying? You care too much, you put too much pressure on yourself, and it becomes kind of like a mental block, which I could see that for Tatum a little bit. Like, he put so much pressure on himself where, in the past, and he's had a lot of great games in the playoffs, but, maybe some of the games where he hasn't played as well, maybe that's, he's had a monkey on his back that he just kind of puts there himself. But yeah, I mean, he just seemed to have the most. He's almost the opposite of Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards obviously loves basketball. Anthony Edwards just don't give a damn. Like, and you could tell.
Right. And speaking of that, moving on, you talk about not caring about it. Anthony Edwards, we talked about what he's done this season. Obviously, he's clearly one of the superstars of the league, potentially going to be the face of it. But before that finals took place, he went out on a limb and said some stuff that he knew that Kyrie was his matchup. He said it a little bit early. We all know how good Kyrie Irving is, but did Anthony Edwards, did he say something prematurely? What is your take on that?
Yeah, he said something prematurely. There's a couple of people that I wouldn't. I mean, if I was of the caliber of player of Anthony Edwards, there's a couple of people I wouldn't call out, and Kyrie probably would be chief among them. I probably would call out LeBron. I probably would call out Kyrie. I'll probably leave them dudes alone. I heard a story when I was growing up. I heard a story that my AD at high school, he went to coach at Fenwick, and he was coaching against Antoine Walker. And I guess one of his players said something to Antoine Walker at halftime. He had like 4 points or something like that. Antoine Walker finished the game, and this is when the quarters was 7 minutes long. He said Antoine Walker finished the game with 42.
Oh, man.
So there's certain people, you just don't poke the bear.
Oh, yeah. And we all know that. Because you know how it feels when you're defensively just out there and you know that the guy is just physically stronger than you. He's better athletic. He can shoot. So you're just on your heels, not knowing what they're going to do. So the last thing you want to do is think that you're going to play the psychological game with a guy who really knows how to do that. I mean, plenty of guys have that type of ability. I mean, I would even say someone like Steph Curry is someone that you don't want to poke. You see what he was able to do in the Olympic Games when he turned it on. People talked about him and the ability he has to really get hot. He can embarrass you in a quick amount of time. So so many players, I think, in the league right now. I mean, you got to say who's the most captivating player in the league in this moment that you just don't want to play against from an offensive standpoint?
Man, that's tough. For the longest time for me, it was Harden. Now, I don't know. I think Luka might be the.
You gonna give Luka some love?
Yeah, I mean, look, Luka just be getting on my look at because he's fat. I mean, he'd be crying all the time. Look at him. But I mean, Luka cold though. So yeah, right. I mean, Luka and that, I was at that game live, game 5, Wolves Mavs, and like honestly, watching starting 5, Anthony Edwards was on the bench, kind of marveling at it because everybody else in the stadium was like, this dude was in another universe. So yeah, Luka might be. I honestly think Jason Tatum is more talented than Luka, but I think Luka is a little bit more. Is more of a killer.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I mean, these guys are really talented. I mean, but I do think it's that mentality, like you're talking about, that Doncic has. You know, Tatum would do it in a different way, but Doncic just does it in a way where you probably feel it with the physicality. I can't say that his points are more loud, but I don't know, man. It also might be a cultural thing too. You got a European guy giving you buckets any way you want. It definitely feels a little bit different than what you got when you got another guy. So I know that's probably got to play a little bit of a role into it.
For certain. There's no question on that, man. But hey, we moving over to across the water into the Euroleague. Speaking of them Europeans, man, Euroleague round number 2, in the books. Biggest Euroleague win of the week. What you think, man?
Well, you know, it's a big time game. We talk about FS and Fenner had a little melee at the end. So I got to go with that one. That's a big time rivalry. I mean, obviously you got some big performers in that game. But that's just one when you talk about the atmosphere, what's all on the line, 2 high-level organizations with good coaches that have championship-level aspirations. I got to give that as the game of the week on this round.
That's fair. I thought the fight between Elijah Bryant and Tariq Bebevich was interesting because I think conversely, when you say on the American side, when you get a European giving you buckets, do you think that if Tariq Bebevich threw Elijah Bryant down, a melee ensued, and Elijah Bryant had some words after, say that had no place in basketball, do you think the repercussions would be different if that was an American who did something like that?
Oh, you already know. They would have made an example out of it. I mean, listen, you can't come over there just causing problems. We all know that. I mean, you know, you're in a situation, depending on who you are, you're just not going to get that type of grace. More often than not, you're going to be taken as the guy that's the instigator in those situations. We've all probably seen it, even may it be in practice or in other situations where you've had moments where you get into a little bit of a scuffle that's just competitive. I mean, even you were even on the team in Galatasaray. We had some moments, and I played in the post, you remember, all the time, taking cheap shots every single day in practice from guys who just don't want to play the right way. And then one day you just get tired of it. And the first thing that comes, they say, why are you the one picking on everybody? It's like, have y'all not paid attention to the entire season long of what happens every time I get the ball? I mean, so I don't really understand how all of a sudden when the retaliation takes place, we ignore all of the things that take place before that, and we go straight to the person that we feel is the belligerent. And oftentimes it's not really accurate.
Yeah, the second person always gets caught. You know that, of course. So I don't remember that. Who is giving you cheap shots in Galatasaray, man? Say their name, man. Say their name.
We'll leave this to Role Player Podcast. We always try to show some love to the players. Remember, that's the motto that you guys have. So
that's what we do. They could be retired now, though. They could be retired. They might not be a player anymore.
I'm definitely not a player.
No, but the other side might not be a player. You ain't gonna call them up. You just gonna leave it like that.
No, we'll let them have it. We'll let them have their moment.
All right, that's fair. Hey, but no, I thought the game of the week for me, that was tough. There's a couple. Monaco is a really good game. Monaco and Maccabi, and there was a little added juice to it with Jordan Lloyd leaving Maccabi and headed right on over to Monaco, even though he didn't play. But yeah, so some added juice, and Maccabi's gonna have to figure out what they got going on. Obviously, everything with the war, who are they gonna get to replace Jordan Lloyd? And they fought hard. They was up 5 at the half, ended up losing by 6. But Maccabi's like one of this. I would ask you this: like Maccabi's one of the most interesting teams in Europe because I feel like they have this reputation, but they haven't had the success that they have had in previous years recently. What do you make of that?
Well, I think historically, it's always viewed as a top tier team and top tier organization. But the reality is, I would say they're probably on that B line. And when you really look at situations about how they get to the championship rounds and whatnot, you have to take a certain route that's going to allow them to get to that situation to compete. Also, the Israeli league is definitely increasing as far as its ability and competitiveness within the league. So you're not just guaranteed an easy win. I think Maccabi barely won by a few buckets over Nez Zialona this past week. Levi Randolph had to have a big-time performance in the game. I think about 17 points, knocking down shots from all over to be able to seal that. So the days of Maccabi being able to basically rest on the weekend and win by 20, 30 points on an easy Israeli League game and then go to the Euroleague fresh, more fresh than other teams, is a little bit over. So they're definitely going to have to try to come up with some ways where they can be a little bit more competitive. But at the same time, this is still a storied organization, well coached, has really good players. But the strength of that organization has always been having really good Israeli players. I think we mentioned Tamir Blatt earlier with an outstanding performance, but as Goods mentioned, he thinks he's one of the best backup guards in the Euroleague. But the level of players has to definitely increase alongside of him on the domestic side. When you have that strength, now you really have the powerhouse that Maccabi has known to have in the past, because you can go 10, 11 deep and you have a little bit more of a passion and soul behind the competitive aspect, and that really gives an advantage when you're playing for Maccabi Tel Aviv.
And excuse me, Jamal corrected me in the back, man. Jordan Lloyd did play. He had 16 points on the Maccabi side. I had 16 and 4.
Oh, okay.
And then left after the game. So that's my bad. Maccabi doesn't really, their roster is kind of lacking this year. I don't know. They don't really have a lot, and especially in turn. Normally they have some American guards, some playmakers. You think that's got to be because of the war?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Yeah, I mean, that does probably play a role with players not necessarily wanting to be there. And also when you're playing your home games on a neutral site, that takes away a lot. That was marked as an automatic win. When you're going into Tel Aviv and have to play, no one could beat Maccabi in Nokia Arena or Yad Eliyahu or whatever they call it now. But it was just a tough environment for teams to play. And if you can go ahead and pencil in saying that you're going to win 50% of your games, plus you're probably going to win 90+% of your domestic league games, it creates a culture of winning. And if you steal a few on the road, now you have yourself in a situation where you're definitely going to be a EuroLeague playoff team and contending for a Final Four. And once you get that far, you never know what can happen. You can win the whole thing. So it's usually a recipe of how they have to get to the finals and usually do it. But some things now are definitely in the way. And you mentioned conflicts off the court playing a little bit of a role in that. But nonetheless, it's the team and the organization that will continue to put, its best foot forward and try to compete against teams that even have much higher budgets and really good organizations.
Makes sense, man. Moving on, man. TJ Shorts is the hottest new thing in Europe, too. Guy that you played against, man. Bo McCalebb. I was on Instagram, and Tiago Splitter came out. His coach came out and said he's one of the most talented point guards he's ever seen. Tiago Splitter, of course, played with the San Antonio Spurs, played with Jeff Teague, Tony Parker, among others. And he says TJ Shorts is one of the most talented point guards he's ever seen. Is he the new Bo McCalebb?
Well, listen, I mean, he's definitely talented. You got to take the word of Tiago Splitter. Here's a guy who's a world champion. He's a multi-year great player in the EuroLeague as well. Tiago now being the coach of his team with TJ Shorts. But listen, when I look at Bo McCalebb, I played with Bo. This is a different generation. I mean, tremendous athlete, end to end. No one had the speed that he had to get up and down the court. He could dunk on you. He could go right and left. His change of speed and change of direction was second to none. But, when you talk about with TJ Shorts, he has the ability, as you mentioned, can be that same caliber of player. And if Tiago Splitter sees that already, I mean, that's why I got to be up next on the EuroLeague stage about what he can do.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about going to dunk on people, but his speed, his speed compared to Bo McCalebb, he got to be right there in terms of his straight line speed, and then just his mid-range game. Bo McCalebb, from what I recall, I played against him once. You don't recall him having the crazy nice floater, right? But not necessarily a mid-range game. So a little different, but that top end speed, TJ gets it, and he's end to end before you can blink. So I like the comparison. What was you gonna say?
Well, the thing about Bo's game was so unorthodox, and I don't know if TJ has an unorthodox game. He has the speed, but Bo was ambidextrous. And when you talk about him being able to finish with both hands and left and right hand, you never knew which way he was going to go on the court. He had an uncanny move to be able to go one direction and cross over really, really quickly and get downhill on you. And that gave him a big-time advantage. Wasn't a great shooter, but when you gave him so much space because you had to respect the drive. I mean, so the end-to-end, you get it off the rebound, he was definitely be able to take it coast to coast, but the athleticism was supreme. You know, it's funny because I believe it was Brian Scalabrine who came over at one point in time, and he was able to say that he felt like Bo McCalebb was actually compared to Derrick Rose at that particular time, and everyone was like, "Man, no way!" But hey, at his prime, I don't know, man.
Nah, I know. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Why not?
We not 2 weeks after Pooh just retired. We're not finna disrespect Pooh like that.
What's the disrespect? What's the disrespect? You got to break this down.
I'll break it down. The disrespect is that Derrick Rose is a supreme athlete, He's doing that with the most athletic guys in the world. Derrick Rose was a miniature LeBron James in his prime. That dude was getting it. He was crossing over. He was going to meet you eye to eye with 7-footers at the rim, cocking it back, 2 hands hanging in the air, dunking that joint, and then yelling at you. They did that my rookie years when we played Bo McCalebb. Bo McCalebb was a great player for those that don't know. A great player. Out of where do you go? Jacksonville? Where do you go to school?
New Orleans. Went to New Orleans.
Went to New Orleans, and obviously many great years in the Euroleague, Siena, Fenerbahce, all over, right? But no. And then somebody compared him to Derrick Rose then too, and that was the drunkest thing I've ever heard in my life. We're not doing that.
I don't know.
Don't do Pooh like that. Don't do Pooh like that.
I don't think it's more so about doing, Derrick Rose that way as much as it is to talking about what Bo McCalebb was able to do when he was in his prime. I mean, we can go and you look at a situation, you go back in that prime that we're talking about. This is 2012. Bo's coming off of some big-time performances. He takes Partizan Belgrade to the 2010 Final Four. He takes Siena back to the 2011 Final Four, winning another Italian League championship. He signs a big deal with Fenerbahce Ukhr, and they play the Boston Celtics in the preseason. This is 2012. Rondo, KG, Paul Pierce, all of these players. Fenerbahce beats the Boston Celtics, and Bo McCalebb has a double-double, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to check it out if we got it, with a 97-91 win. Bo McCalebb in that particular game, 35 minutes, 9 for 14 shooting, 4 for 4 from the free throw line. He had 21 points, 5 assists, and a win. I mean, so when someone's saying it's like you're being disrespectful, I'm just saying that Bo McCalebb in his prime was something tough to handle, and people need to respect that from that aspect. And it's not a disrespect to talk about compared to Derrick Rose when you're talking about a comparison of the NBA to Europe. So I don't know if I disagree with Brian Scalabrine. I think that the assessment is a little bit spot on.
And here's where the disrespect comes in, because you just mentioned everything he was doing in 2011. Now look, what was Derrick Rose doing in 2011?
That's the MVP season, correct?
That's the MVP season of the NBA.
Well, there we go.
That we are not fit, and he was 22 years old. So we not finna do that.
We're not finna do that.
What? Hey, much respect to Bo. You could give love to Bo McCalebb and all that. Just leave Pooh out of it. You ain't got to mention his name. You didn't have to bring him up. But Brian Scalabrine didn't have to bring him up.
Hey, man, I'm just saying. He had to let people know. I think he was doing a good job as an analyst on that. But, hey, that's what we do on the Role Player Podcast is you're tuning in to the live stream. I'm Richard Hendrix and Jordan Taylor. No Anthony Goods today with us as we're moving forward along into the show, into halftime. Talking a little bit about Jordan, we have this NBA Hall of Fame class that's got a new induction into it. Headlining that class, we got Vince Carter, Chauncey Billups, Doug Collins. We also have Simone Augustus, Michael Cooper into the 2024-2025 Basketball Hall of Fame class. What do you think about this class? Is the Hall of Fame still the prestigious Hall of Fame it once was, or a little bit watered down? What are your thoughts on the Hall of Fame selections?
Well, first of all, we also got Bo Ryan in there too. So shout out Wisconsin's own Bo
Ryan. There we go.
Getting into the class, But nah, I don't think it's watered down. The Basketball Hall of Fame is easier to get into than the Football Hall of Fame. However, I can't point to a lot. It's not like these guys are mid. Simone Augustus might be my favorite one.
Right.
Got in. She was cold. She was cold. So like really Simone Augustus relative to Simone Augustus career wise might have had the best career out of all the
Right.
So I think maybe when you hear name or name value or name recognition, you could say it's watered down. But I mean, Vince Carter is one of the, he changed the way guys played the game in his own right. Like, or I don't know about changed the way or changed how guys played the game, but he definitely had people looking up to him and trying to emulate what he was doing. Chauncey Billups, and it's popular, but there was plenty of people who tried to model their game after Chauncey Billups. So I guess I don't know what should be criteria for getting into the Hall of Fame.
Well, I'll take this.
And what do you think? You think it's watered down?
This is my take. I think that Hall of Fames, when it comes to Halls of Fame, I definitely believe that these players who have played definitely deserve their flowers. I definitely think that they have done the work and they deserve the recognition. But when you put people in a Hall of Fame, to me, and I've said it for the longest, there needs to be tiers when it comes to the Hall of Fame. I mean, because once you start allowing certain people to get in, now you have the same status of people who are far better. A Michael Jordan, LeBron James eventually get Magic Johnson, Wilt Chamberlain. And now when you start letting in others, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, it becomes a situation where these players all have the same standing. I would always say that it needs to be in Halls of Fame tiers to it. It's just like airline flights or status. You need to have diamond members, platinum members, gold, silver. It doesn't need to be a situation where everybody comes in and you're on the same board. Now, I think Chauncey Billups is definitely deserving. He was the MVP of that finals run that they had. I think that Vince Carter obviously was someone who definitely was dynamic when it came to the game and what they were able to bring to, the athletic aspect of it. But at the same time, when you're comparing what they did to some of the others, I don't know if you can say that what they did has the same level of weight. At the same time, as I mentioned, you got to respect it. But I think it's got to be levels to the Hall of Fame because of prestige and respect out of the other guys, just as you mentioned with the comparison of Derrick Rose and Bo McCalebb. You got to give the respect to the guys who are A-line Hall of Famers.
But doesn't it go without being said? Like, we know Michael Jordan is more of a Hall of Famer. It doesn't go without being said.
No, because if I get in, I'm in.
Chauncey Billups.
No, if I get in, I get in. I also think it should be some time restrictions on it. I mean, so if you look at someone like Michael Cooper, who's able to get in, I think he had a wonderful career. If I'm not mistaken, he also was a great coach in his own right, doing things in the WNBA. But if you haven't played a game since the 80s, early 90s, you didn't get any more statistics. What changed for you to get in now 30 years after your playing career is over? So, maybe you get in as a contributor, as well as Doug Collins, who I think has done so many really good things in the game with his broadcast analysis. I think he's one of the best. I love to hear what he has to say, and as well as coaching. But longevity, how do you get better just because you haven't played in a long time? I don't understand that. The Hall of Fame should have a time period in which you let people in, and then it should be in or not. How do you get better when you're not playing?
I don't know what the time period is, but you're saying, but fans automatically have tiers in which they put players who get in the Hall of Fame, right? Like that's kind of and it's subjective. Like some fans may put Chauncey Billups above someone maybe he shouldn't be above. But if you're talking about I got into the Hall of Fame as one of the participants who got in, like that's like honor amongst thieves. Like, Michael Cooper ain't finna go say nothing crazy to Michael Jordan about, oh, we both in the Hall of Fame. That's not what you're talking about.
No, but it's like, listen, like I said, when you get on the flight and you get in the plane, the people that's sitting up there in first class, you get on that plane and you might have to take on the big jumbo jets. You have to go to the left where they are over there. And you can't even go see what they got. They got a curtain. They're already getting in. They're drinking champagne. They're eating food. Then you got another little business class level. You might get to walk through those. But the other people that's flying on this flight, you don't get to eat the same food. You don't get to be on the same flight. You don't get to get all of the same perks that everybody. You riding? Yeah, you're going to get there. But you can't have the same level of prestige as everyone else. You don't get on first. You don't get off first. So when you can get there and say all that you want about the fact that, hey, we're all Hall of Famers, it's got to clearly be defined that there's levels to this stuff. Because right now it's not.
See, I hear what you're saying, but I think it's implicitly defined. I think that everybody knows that Michael, if it's a plane full of, to use your own analogy, if it's a plane full of Hall of Famers, Michael Cooper getting off and going to the right, MJ getting off and he going to the left. And Michael Cooper know that. Michael Cooper ain't finna go sit up at if there's 15 seats in first class in Delta One, Michael Cooper know good and well that he ain't sitting in Delta One with all the rest of them Hall of Famers. And that's what I'm saying. That's honor amongst thieves. Like he ain't, and if he did, to me, that's where, the rest of the people, nah. So I get what you're saying. I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I think that's more of an understood thing.
It might be understood that you have that when it comes to the respect amongst the player. But this stuff needs to be clearly stated. So people who now you have all these internet trolls, these statistical people that like to get on Wikipedia in a whim, they need to clearly see that there's levels to it, because this generation is moving forward. And they're all getting ready to die on off. And when you start looking at them and comparing numbers and saying that, you need to clearly understand that it was a difference between this person and that person. Because nowadays you look at it and someone like Bill Russell or Wilt Chamberlain, or you even go back and look at other Hall of Famers in that particular time period who were dominant players of their time. And everyone can go look at the stats and say, well, he only averaged 18 points a game. He's not better than some marginal player today. It needs to clearly be distinguished that this person was one of one in his time. And it needs to let people know that it has a big difference between the top tier guys, the next tier, and then the people that we got to let you in because you did achieve a certain status. But the respect's got to be given to these guys, and you got to have a distinction of the players who definitely earn a little bit more than others.
I see it being a problem statistically and maybe even for some guys not in the Hall of Fame where, but I don't know how, like you might take, Michael Cooper, even for example, who's in the Hall of Fame now, and compare him to, a guy right now, to even a guy like Chandler Parsons. Chandler Parsons has better numbers than Michael Cooper. I believe we have to get Jamal to check on that. But I see what you're saying and how people would, kind of, why ain't Chandler Parsons in the Hall of Fame?
Oh,
but
easily.
that's a different conversation. If we're just talking about Chandler Parsons ain't in the Hall of Fame, so he's not even on the plane.
Yeah, but if if you have the time period is long enough, then you give people enough time. Then they forget how it was when you played, and they can say, well, look at the numbers, look at the accolades. He clearly must have been in this. You need to have a time period where people's game and what they did as far as the impact is still fresh on your mind, so you can make the proper determination if that person is Hall of Fame worthy. If you got to look back 20 years later, 30 years later, and then look at the numbers and you forget how they were in that moment after you look at the resume and then make a determination, I don't know if they're Hall of Fame worthy. I think they're great players, but if you don't have some type of tier system into it, then you're definitely discrediting what people did in the moment.
That's fair enough. I can't argue with that. That's fair enough. Hey, man, let's move on to my favorite segment, man, the third quarter. It is the role player of the week time, and we got to give it out again to another Midwest cat, University of Minnesota. Daniel Oturu, my bad, Dan. I can't speak right now. Mispronounce your name. 21-6 in a losing effort to Fenerbahce this week. However, FS is 1-1, and Daniel is averaging 17.5 points and 7.5 rebounds. After 2 rounds, the former 22nd round pick is only 25 years old. Is he one of the most, if not the most, underrated player in the Euroleague right now?
I think he is. I mean, you talk about his physique, 6'10", 240, 250 pounds. I mean, he's such a solid body. He can necessarily disrupt a lot of things with his physicality and the youth in what you talk about with the NBA experience. I mean, I think he's definitely impactful and can be a major force as you move forward in the EuroLeague. And not only that, but for his career. I mean, you mentioned the age. You come in on this high level, you're playing on a championship level organization that has high expectations, and you're having big time performances early on. This is what you want to see from your players when you bring them over with that type of European experience. So shout out to Daniel Otoru and what he's been able to do early on in the EuroLeague season. And that's why he's this week's role player of the week.
Yeah, I'm gonna be that I told you so guy with this one. When FS signed him, he came. Daniel was, man, obviously I know him from Minnesota, but when he came over to Europe and he signed with I can't remember who he signed with originally in Turkey, and quickly moved to FS, got bought out and moved to FS. But that was a great move, great signing by them. I think he's probably I need to go back and scour all the rosters for the 10th time in the last 2 weeks, but he might be the most talented big in EuroLeague, man. And with upside, he's 25. He's already touched the NBA. You know, he's figuring it out. I think he's going to end up back in the NBA. I think he's a rotational guy. But I see him, honestly. I could see him kind of going the backdoor route, going the other way around, and ending up on an NBA team that's really a contender. When he's locked in, you know, I got a chance to play with him in the Pro-Am in the summertime. And, dude, when he's locked in, he runs like a gazelle. You know, he's blocking shots. He's going to get it at the apex. He can step outside and shoot it. He can go down low. He's got a soft touch. His feet are good. He's really a prototype big now in an NBA scenario. And I think he could step into an NBA roster and help a team right now. Well, and 17.5 and 7 in the EuroLeague is kind of crazy at 25.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. I mean, you know, the ability, as you mentioned, his mobility that he has, that's going to allow him to definitely play off the ball because, you know, they're not necessarily going to give him the ball in the NBA. So he can play off of the players who are facilitating. At his size and ability and athleticism, he has the ability to finish. And, you know, the experience, too, 25 years old, but he's now had the high-level European experience. He's been in the NBA. When he gets another look to come back to the league, the game will slow down even more, and that will make him even more of a serviceable player as he tries to continue his career at a high level. But big-time player. Hope he can continue to keep this momentum going for the rest of the season because people will watch him.
No, 100%. Shout out Daniel, man, and yeah, hope he keeps going strong. But let's move into Coach's Corner, fourth quarter, man. And I know this is going to be a topic for you because you're a big man, and I also know as an old head that you hate the new terms that people come out with. But the NBA often plays drop defense, so you can comment on that, or switch. Often, not all the time, but often plays drop defense or switch. One thing that's notably missing to me is the hedge that used to exist in the NBA and trying to make guys uncomfortable on defense. It seems now you just try and, you know, kind of bother guys with length and force them into shots that are, you know, that are difficult shots and kind of playing the numbers. So do you think that it's time for a variety of coverage to come back, or are guys just too talented and skilled now?
Well, I think I like to see the diversity of play. And not only do I like to see the diversity of play, I like to see it when it comes to different coaches and their schemes about what they're doing. Have a philosophy that you believe in and roll with it. I mean, there's 30 teams in the NBA and everybody does the exact same thing. You even see the same thing in college. Like, I like the old school style where you could watch, you know, Phil Jackson and the Bulls run the triangle. You could watch Jerry Sloan and the Jazz run the pick and roll. You can even watch Mike D'Antoni get up in town and run fast break transition offense and live with their philosophy. Defensively, I would like to see more than just one look. I think ball pressure is always something that makes decision makers, point guards, makes it more difficult on them when you allow them to come off and teams are in drop coverage. Yeah, I understand you can put a big physical guy on them and try to force them to shoot a mid-range jumper. But for me personally, I think being aggressive on defense is going to be more beneficial in the long run as the game continues to go. So when you start to say bigs, I like to see you hedging. I like to see switching. Tight and flat defensive coverage is also effective depending on the personnel. But just committing to one, I think what drop coverage does for a lot of bigs, it creates a lot of laziness from bigs because you know you don't have to be at the level of the screen. You put a lot of pressure on your ball handler and the guard to have to make sure he's fighting over the top and trying to put pressure on him. So I like to see activity. I like to see teams being up on the level of the ball. And if you're going to go drop coverage, I like that to be more of a strategic thing that you're doing as a change up rather than your base defense?
I agree. And Ryan Schmidt, who I played for in London, is in Atlanta now, was with the G League with College Park Skyhawks last year, and now is on the bench with the Hawks. Played a hedge defense that had unique principles, and it really was it forced the big to be active and kind of relied on length and creating havoc through paying passing lanes and an aggressive big. More so, and the ball handler obviously had to be the point of attack defender obviously had to be aggressive, but it causes it's a kind of a mix of aggressiveness and causes skeptic decision making by the ball handler. So either way, I say that I hope that they kind of implement that in Atlanta. I would love to see it. I think a lot of guys now, because what you're saying, even on the offensive side, are so used to seeing drop, where it would take a while for them to adjust and kind of pick up the reads. And what it does is, I mean, if anything, make some of these other dudes a decision maker. That's one thing about the NBA. What Draymond Green got away with and made a living off of, because he, had Steph Curry, he was a decision maker. He wasn't a playmaker. But a lot of these dudes don't have the IQ that Draymond has. So I'd be interested to see how guys struggle being decision makers. Once the primary ball handler has to get off the ball and swings it to you, what you going to do with it next?
Yeah, I definitely. I think that's where the analytics has messed with the beauty of the game. When you have a situation where everyone is able to look at the numbers, and when they look at the numbers, they play the numbers on how they play defense and even how they play offense. You take away that aspect of trying to figure out ways of trying to be creative as a coach and what you can create and implement defensively. I do agree with what you're saying, that the activity from everyone on the string, including the big man, who's a very important piece, which requires him to have a lot better conditioning. When you have other players who are being active, it forces everyone else to be active. If you have someone being lazy, it kind of becomes contagious that other people are lazy within the defensive structure as well, too. So I think activity, even if someone says this might be a waste, is a positive thing. And it also moves forward over to your bench, because you can get more people into the game. They can play a little bit more up-tempo style. And you have to know that pressure is going to be the standard. So when you do fall off, you're still going to be in a proper range to still be able to be pretty good defensively. But when you're already in off technique, the natural tendency is for you to fall back even more. And now you're just giving up wide open shots, and you don't get to dictate anything from a defensive standpoint. So I like to see ball pressure. I like to see players up on the level of the ball. And I think from a coaching standpoint, when you have pressure on the ball from the offensive guard playing defense and from the big on the level of the screen, you give yourself a clear indication if you can make a determination if your team is playing good defense or not, just by watching it. And that's something that gives you an opportunity to make that observation quickly so you can make adjustments if needed be on the fly. How did you always like that when you played against pressure or played against drop?
When I played against pressure, I have a bigger physique. So, nobody likes pressure. I don't know. Nobody likes that.
Right.
So, and if you have space, then obviously, however, I think it depends on, there's a technique to pressure as well, right? Like, if I can feel you pause, then I can draw fouls on you. I can rip through. So it has to be pressure with an IQ, with a purpose. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you can only do that for, you're going to be tired. You can't do that for 35 minutes, offensively or defensively. It really becomes a battle of will, honestly. And I don't even necessarily like when people say that, because everybody wants it. Everybody wants to be good. But it really becomes a game of, how more like a boxing match. Like, how long can I last? When do I have to get off the ball? When can I try and split a screen, or when can I jail you and try and get to my shot? It's just a lot of nuances come into play then. But yeah, nobody likes pressure in that manner. But drop, everybody wants to see drop. To me, as a guard, if you see drop, I can do whatever I want. All I need is a good screen. I'm gonna shoot it, and once I start making shots, it's a wrap.
Right.
So
And as a big, every big wants to play drop coverage, which I think, is lazy, just to be honest with you. I mean, we all want to play it. It allows us to sit there and sit back on the defensive end and really not be involved and always seem to point the blame on the guard if something happens, because you only have one responsibility, which is to not let your big score on the roll and just to protect the rim. So I think it doesn't really engage things as a team. You need to be, you need to be ingratiated in the offense and defense from all players in what you're doing. If one guy is just standing back watching his teammates work, I mean, what kind of basketball is that?
Right. No, 100%. 100%. Listen, man, it's know what time it is, the end of the show. But before we let you go, we got the segment Paycheck, Rain Check. Goods ain't here today, so I'm going to take it away. Paycheck, rain check. Somebody's paycheck is taking a rain check. But today, a little different. Montrezl Harrell just re-signed with the Adelaide 36ers down under. And it seems to be that he's found a real joy and love for the game, man, which is great to see. And what does it feel like? Tell the viewers what it feels like to find that rejuvenation. Everybody goes through a little patch in their career, I think, when, it feels heavy. The game's a bit of a drag, whatever the situation may not be great, whatever it is. Montrezl Harrell obviously was sixth man of the year, I believe, 5-6 years ago, and now is overseas. So I can't imagine the mental, ups and downs that he's been through. But he looks happy. He looks like he's loving the game. So just talk about that and what that feels like.
Oh, well, psychologically, we all know that's everything in the sport. So many people look at the physical tools in the game, but the most important thing you can have as a player is the confidence. It's a swagger. And when you have that and you're in a good space and you're able to play your best level of basketball, Montrezl Harrell is a guy coming out of Louisville who was really, really good, came right into the NBA and was very impactful with his athleticism, found himself in a high-quality role on those Clippers teams and was a contributor in many of the teams that he was on instantly. But you kind of find yourself out of the league, but, you're still young. You have that ability to play. And now he's got a chance to get back to his form playing down in Australia. I love to see basketball players play the game as long as they possibly can. And unfortunately, for many players who step away from the game and are not playing long, high-level basketball, it's because of the psychological aspect that it's a hard pill to swallow, that you are no longer on the level that you once were, and you can't seem to get past it, and it has a reflection in your game. But if you can find you a home in a new place that's going to respect you and value you, then you need to go play as long as you possibly can, because when the ball stops bouncing, you're going to really find out that it's hard to find a skill set that you're really, really good at. And, for Montrezl Harrell to see what he's able to do now in Australia, hats off to him. And that's why he's been able to make good decisions and move forward in his career.
No, I would echo that 100%. I mean, I think seeing people find the love of the game, especially if it's not in the NBA, especially when it's on a lower level, like you said, when you can find the joy in that, I think that just provides kind of clarity in your life, clarity in your, really gives you a sense of, I think, peace as a person as well. You've kind of gone through this event. It seems like it's so heavy, and then you kind of rediscover yourself. For me, I was in, probably after I was in Italy, had a bunch of injuries, and then went to Israel. And, I was off basketball. I got to Israel, and I loved Israel, and I loved the environment and the climate, and I loved the basketball. And it just kind of rejuvenated me to want to work again. And it's hard to have that swagger and confidence when you're not happy. And I know a lot of people say getting to play basketball is easy, but it's not all the time. So, yeah, it's cool to see Montrezl Harrell get back on I should say get back on the good foot, but to seem like he's enjoying the game. Listen,
I would say that to any person is like, if you're no longer in the NBA, going overseas is not a demotion. People have to learn to get their mentality, get the mentality of respecting the job that you have. There's a team out there that wants you. Somebody wants you. They're going to pay you for it. They want you to play and get to play the game that you love. And too often guys get discouraged because they're no longer on the level that they wish that they could be on. They feel a certain way because they don't get the respect from others from the outside. But you need to go play for whoever wants you to play. And it is what it is. And if you have a level of standard and expectation for yourself, then give that same standard on that level of team that you're playing for and enjoy the game. We all are going to have a twilight in our career. I mean, I've been on those situations. Jordan, you have too, when you're playing for top level teams and you find yourself falling out on teams and you say, how did I get here? But mentally, you got to get yourself in a space to say, I'm thankful that someone wants me to be here, and go out there and deliver, give the game that you know that you can for yourself, and keep playing this beautiful game. Because when the ball stops bouncing, you're not going to have anybody who knows who you are and wants to cheer your name at all in the stands. So quickly make the adjustment, keep the ball bouncing, and keep the love for the game.
Well said. Well said, man. That's how we gonna start ending every show like that. Richard Hendrix soapbox, man. That's beautiful. Well said, man. That's all we got for you today, man. Make sure y'all go ahead, follow along on all socials at Role Player Media, at Swish Cultures. I don't want to expand too far beyond that, because you know what? I wish I could have just ended it with that, man. That was beautiful, man. You wrote that down?
No, that just came from the heart, Jay. Just came from the heart.
That came from the heart. All right, well, shit. We're going to have to give you more airtime, man. My bad. I wasn't familiar with your game. But listen, man, that's all we got this week for the Role Player Podcast. We appreciate y'all checking it out. I'm Jordan Taylor. That's Richard Hendrix. Make sure you hit subscribe, like below, and we'll catch y'all next time every Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern or 12 p.m. Eastern. Make sure y'all stay tapped in for that. Peace.